Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 3 of Hear or Heard. Today, we will be interviewing and talking to some amazingly talented Black student athletes on the Black Student Athlete Experience in honor of Black History Month. Now, this episode, we are going to be talking about Black culture, social justice movements, and ultimately just giving them the space to share their stories with you guys. So we'll go around, have everybody introduce themselves, but we do have Jalen with us, we have Dom with us, and we have Evan. So who wants to start by introducing themselves?
I'm Evan Betty, part of the basketball team. I'm a fifth-year senior. Yeah.
I'm Dominic Williams. I'm a part of the track and field team. I'm a 6-year senior who transferred in as a grad transfer last year.
And I'm Jalen Sherrod. I'm on the women's basketball team, and I'm a junior.
Okay, everybody, and I am your host, Ariana. I'm the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Associate. Okay, first we'll start with ground rules. This is ground rules for our participants, but this is also ground rules for anybody watching from home and, may choose to comment or like or reshare. So first, this is a dialogue. This is not a debate. So let's just remember that when we're talking. This is no need for it to be an argument. Assume good intent, but recognize your impact. We're all good people, but sometimes we say stuff and we don't understand how it may impact other people, although our intent might have been good. Accept others' reality. Just because it didn't happen to you, it might have happened to them. Always use I statements because it's coming from yourself. Don't generalize for larger communities or other people. Listen to learn. Don't just listen to listen. Practice active listening skills. Allow others to learn what you already know. Utilize a brave space. That's a step up from a safe space. So, call people in when you're telling these stories. Challenge people's stories. Ask questions. And then most importantly, be respectful and utilize the platinum rule. Make sure you treat others the way they want to be treated and not just how you want to be treated. All right. So we will start with Dom. Since this is his second appearance on the show, he was so good we had to bring him back twice. Share your story. Tell me where you came from and where'd your love from sports start?
Okay. Well, I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana, born and raised. I went to private school most of my elementary career. Tried out for track and field like my 8th grade year. And actually at that time I was a little bit smaller, so I was still running a bit. So I think I ran the 4x4. And after I would throw shot put. But shot put was definitely the thing I was better at. So going into high school, did all the sports at football, basketball, wrestling, track and field, but definitely football and track and field were my top 2 loves. And sooner or later, I was my senior year, and I just kind of developed this passion for winning and competing in track and field. And I ended up really realizing I love it a lot. And my coach walked up to me and was like, "Hey, you want to do this in college?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So I met with the local university coach, University of Louisiana Lafayette. And then the rest is kind of history. I got onto the team there, kept competing, and really just kind of deepened my love for track and field way beyond what I really knew what it was. Because in high school, I didn't know much about other than what I was doing, which is shot put. But like as I learned more about throwing, running, and jumping, I just started to love the sport and really enjoy that individual aspect of it, and enjoy that it was kind of all on me to compete and to do my job. And it was good to have teammates around, but I liked that independence in it. So, and then I ended up here after competing 4 years for UL. I was just kind of ready to transfer and experience the world. I've been in Lafayette, Louisiana for the last 22 years of my life, so I was like, okay. So this was mid-COVID, or pre-COVID. I went to transfer portal, mid-COVID, and COVID hit, and so everything shut down. And then, through emailing coaches and getting to know people, I got to know Casey Malone, who's my coach now, and I ended up here, and I haven't regretted it since. It's been a great time.
Hey, no regrets. All right, Jalen, let's get into your story.
Yeah, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I started playing basketball. I don't really know around what age. I just know I was outside playing. I was the only girl in my neighborhood, and my neighbors, it was 3 brothers, and they had like friends, and I had another couple of neighbors who would come over and play, and I used to just always play with the boys. And one day my uncle looked outside and watched me, and he told my mom I needed to be put on a organized basketball team, and it kind of went from there. I don't, like Dom said, I don't regret my experience here at all. I think it has opened my eyes to diversity, being that I've been in Birmingham all my life. I didn't really move or get out outside of Birmingham. I mean, I traveled a lot with basketball and family, but yeah, I really am grateful for my experience here, and it developed my love for basketball and developed my love for basketball, not just playing, but seeing myself in the future, whether it's coaching or going professionally. I just love the sport so much, and I love the competitive aspect. And I think it's just I compete in everything I do, so it's more so like I can't see myself not being in a competitive space. So yeah, I just really am appreciative for my experience here at CU and getting to know people, getting to know my teammates, getting to know other athletes. I think this year has really been a year for me more than anything of getting outside of my own basketball team and getting to know so many other athletes. So I think that's, if anything, that's what I'm most grateful for this experience, is just meeting different people and getting myself outside of my comfort zone, because I know anybody will tell you when I got here I was really quiet. I didn't talk to anybody, but I kind of branched out this year and got outside of myself and got outside of my comfort zone. So it allowed me to just grow, I guess, in that aspect.
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We've seen the growth, Jalen. I've seen it. Ev, let's get into your story.
Los Angeles, born and raised. I moved out to Orange County when I was 16 years old, and then moved back in my freshman year of college. But I've been playing basketball since I was 4 years old. It's a long time. Yeah, 19 years. You know, I don't regret any of it, though. I don't regret, not hanging out with my friends. I don't regret missing parties for, time in the gym. I don't regret any of that, because it's allowed me to be where I am. It's allowed me to be the type of person I am, and it's allowed me to have that character established. And my parents did a really good job of, establishing that foundation for me as far as character goes, not even related to the sport. But I had many offers coming out of high school, but I narrowed it down to 3: Purdue, Miami, and here. And ultimately chose here because I felt like it was the most family aspect of the 3, and family oriented, and it was close to my home, Los Angeles. So playing at Pac-12, you get to play in front of my family 2 times a year, so that was cool as well. So I had a great time here, my 5 years. I feel like the student athletes here have changed over time. You see a lot of different faces come in and come out. But, I'm grateful for it all. Yes, sir.
5 years in. Okay, I'm not going to lie. I was expecting a little bit like, I'm from LA, Super Bowl champs. He didn't give us none of that. Like,
He said, I forgot about
he forgot all about that.
Happened last night.
Super Bowl. I know. I'm from Houston. I rep my city through and through. I was expecting a little bit more.
We didn't have a football team growing up in LA until I was like 17.
Okay, yeah. So it's not
They was
really.
in St. Louis. So
That's true.
I'm literally an Eagles fan because my mom's from Philly. So
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Okay, well, we did have an historic halftime performance for Black culture.
Yeah,
Talk about it a little bit.
That
Did
was
y'all
cool.
watch?
Being from LA, you get to hear that music. Straight date, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you get to hear that, and it was cool. Seeing it on a large stage and seeing it, just so, I don't know, emphasized, I feel like. And it was just cool to see Dre and Snoop just throw it back to the 90s. And cool to see Mary J. Eminem was out there too, 50. Yeah. So it was a bunch of icons really collabing together and creating something special, I feel like.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Same. Do you think it goes down in history as the best halftime performance?
Shit, it's one of them. I don't know.
No, Jayla said no. She
Who
meant
you
that.
got on top?
I mean, Beyonce did do a Super Bowl.
Hey,
I'm about to
Beyonce
say,
is my girl.
I honestly
She
was
did.
thinking the same thing. Beyonce did the Super Bowl.
Beyonce did
Beyonce
it.
rocked it for sure.
I mean, I liked it. I just wish it was kind of longer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wish it was longer too.
But I mean, I really did like it. But yeah, I mean, you can't forget Beyonce did the Super Bowl.
I'll never forget B, but I think they just did it for the culture.
I mean, it's good. It was good. It's up there.
It was good. It was
But I don't know if I say it was the best.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the best either, but it's
Oh.
up there.
Okay, maybe we gotta agree to disagree. Y'all know I'm a diehard fan. Beehive over here. Okay. So I'm a strong believer in racism is taught, it's not innate. So when was y'all's first experience really realizing you were black?
I think from a young age, I knew I was black. Because my mom and dad both are, well, I was gonna say they're black, but yeah, but it's like more so that they ingrained us into black culture locally. That like I understood I was very different, and it helped slash I wouldn't say hurt, but I was in private school that was majority white, so realizing that I'm different than everybody else was pretty immediate. Kind of like I can't even remember it because it's like I am one of few people other than my siblings that look like me in this school. And then going out into the community, whether it's church or events, and then seeing everybody else that looks like me was a really great experience to realize that, okay, I am different and I am black. And as far as like dealing with any sort of racism, like I think I was ignorant for a long time, kind of growing up in a sheltered way in private school and different things. Like you would hear some things, but you wouldn't really recognize it as racism. But as I like got older and learned more, like especially like during months like this, like Black History Month, like going to educational pieces and learning like how racism stems from just different things. Like as a young kid, I kind of started to realize how I could be treated different based on my color versus my white cohort. And it wasn't really super conscious. It was kind of subconscious. I kind of like knew it, but I couldn't actualize it.
I would say my story is kind of different than Dom's. I grew up around all black people. Like I went to all black schools growing up. I didn't like. I had more so. We were the majority when I grew up. So it was. I think I learned when I was black when I just learned the history of being black in America and learn the history of being black in the world. Really, I would say. I think the first experience I had with like not white people, but just I had a white teacher in high school, and she actually was my favorite teacher growing up because and I still talk to her to today. She was my English teacher, but it was more so a relationship we had where she didn't treat us any different because we were black. And I've growing up and getting older, I do realize how it could have been uneasy for her being in an all-black school, teaching all black kids, and having to be like, my experience in the world is different than theirs. Mm-hmm. So how do I have the, I guess, not power, but how do I have the, I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but to
Culturally
teach,
competent?
Yeah, to teach black kids knowing that I am a white person. But she went about that in a lot of ways, and I really appreciate her because she, in a way, taught us to not think of ourselves any less. Being in a city school, we had less resources. Like I went to the magnet high school of Birmingham City Schools, and my high school was the worst out of all. Like you had to test to get into my high school. We didn't have a football field. We didn't have like pools. Our football team literally had to travel on buses to even get to a field every day. So seeing that we were supposed to be the top school in the city, but we had the less resources, and it was more so like we just had to do what we had to do. And I think that taught me, seeing so many of my friends on my AAU teams, and even my best friend, she went to a majority white school, seeing the resources they had and the time they poured into their athletes, was just, I think, was eye-opening for me, because it was more so like you really see the difference of how people, like, it's like you were saying, it's more so taught. And I think it's subconsciously taught, but I think for me it taught me that, like, you're not any less, you can still be successful. Like, I still got to where I got to, being that I went through that. But I'm grateful for the fact that I went to that high school, because it taught me to be thankful for what you do have, and be thankful and make a way when it kind of seems like it's no way to get through. So I think I just take that mentality into what I do as a black woman in America, because like it's just hard. And I think my experience here taught me a lot too, because this was the first experience I had being a minority. So this was actually like, I mean, it's crazy to say, but being
shock?
being 17 coming out here, it was just different, and it was my first experience, so I didn't go through. I had to learn on my own, and I had to adjust on my own. But I am grateful because it taught me how to exist in a space and not feel less than in a space where I was the minority. And I go back to that teacher because she also taught us like what the real world was really about. And I think a lot of even not black teachers, but they tried to shelter us away from that because they wanted us to be so comfortable at school. So they kind of sheltered us away from the reality of the world. But she came and she told us like the real world is different. And she reached out to my coaches here. She talked to Shan here. And so it was really just getting me prepared. And I really am grateful for that experience. So, yeah.
Dang, she went a little deep. Opened the door for you, Evan. She opened the door.
I guess. Growing up in LA, you immediately immersed in a pretty diverse culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many people from all different places around LA, and you know, growing up in like elementary school and kind of middle school, it wasn't. I didn't really like. Obviously, occurred that I was black because my dad, LAPD, he experienced racism on the job. He experienced racism driving home, with a beanie on, looked like a mask. You know what I'm saying? Pull him over. He like, I'm LAPD, dude. But I digress. Similar to Jalen, I went to a magnet school as well, the Magnet School of Los Angeles, and it's pretty ironic to hear that about the lack of facilities that you talked about, because my school was really supposed to be a really good school as education wise, but as far as athletics, we weren't really that high on the on the promised land, if ever were to say. So it was kind of like it was just education. But I wasn't doing that well in school anyway, so it was like I had to get out of LA. And when I went to Orange County, I was like, okay, I think this is where I realized like this is the difference. Like the city school was like not that well funded, not that well kept up, not that well just organized and manageable. But in Orange County, it was like every school, even the public school, was just like decently run, and just there's a difference in the amount of care and the amount of pride that's shown in the schools and how they run. So I felt like growing up, I felt like when I went to my second high school, I was like, this is the difference. Like, it's the difference between the city and then like the suburbs. And I mean, that was like probably the first instance that I was like, this is really like a disparity, kind of. Like, that's why I realized, like, okay, this is kind of a problem, kind of. But, like, obviously, like, when I'm growing up, we had me and my boys walking down the street, like, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, walking to 7-Eleven. We get stopped by the police, like, okay, we're black kids, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not any shade towards other races, but, like, they see that as a level of danger, almost. And so you're as a threat, 5, 6, 14-year-old black kids walking around.
14.
Yeah.
Let that sink in, y'all. 14.
Right. So, I mean, I realized that from probably that moment. But, I mean, when I went to high school, my second high school, I was like, okay, this is bigger than just, walking to 7-Eleven getting stopped by it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's a problem with the economy. It's a problem with the, with the structure, I feel. So.
Institutionalized racism. When you talk about that and you talk about underfundings of schools in certain areas where, I mean, you look at the areas, it's going to be higher percentage of black and brown kids that attend those schools. Right. So kind of going into Colorado, and we've seen on black television and black pop culture shows like Ballers and Insecure, and they talk about Colorado and how you come here and you're like a percentage. Being a black person, you become a percentage. Yeah. You don't see many people that look like you. How do y'all, and what does it mean for you to be black in Boulder?
I mean, for me personally, that's kind of a loaded question. But for me personally, I didn't look at it no different than me being in LA. I kind of liked it just because not as much people. But there are some instances where, like, driving, like, you look at the person in the next lanes, like, who are you? Like that kind of that kind of look, you know,
Yeah.
from certain white people, you know, just kind of that like look of unfamiliarity and like,
Like, whoa there, buddy, what you doing here?
yeah, exactly, like I'm not supposed to be here. I go to school here, like, so it is some of that, but for the most part, I feel like the white people in my community and our Boulder community have shown me a lot of love, and you know, there's always going to be some people that are not as loving and not as I'd say joyful as you know the other ones. But I mean, that's all reflection on your character individually, and not you know a society as a whole. I feel
Yeah.
so.
Uh, Being black in Boulder, for me, like I said before, it was a real culture shock coming here at 17 and being like, where are all the black people? Like, because that's all I grew up around. But at the same time, I haven't really had any major instances out here, which I think in the back of my head I've always feared because I've never dealt with it, so I don't know how I would deal with it in a space if it ever happened. Like, of course, I've dealt with just more so just ignorance in a sense, but I haven't dealt with any like blatant racism, which I am grateful for. But at the same time, like I said, I don't really know what I would do if it came down to the experience. But I mean, yeah, it's just totally different. It's just a different experience, and I think what I'm most grateful for is I haven't felt the need to change myself in Boulder. I think that's the biggest thing because I feel like a lot of people that I know, when they go to PWIs, they feel like, oh, well, I can't be as who I was back at home because people will look at me differently, or I can't be who I am truly because they'll start looking at me like a problem, or they'll start looking at me as a threat. I haven't felt that here really at all because I mean I just am who I am, and I haven't felt the need to change that. And I don't know if that's like a part of just how my teammates are, how my coaches carry themselves. And I can't speak for everybody, but I am grateful that I haven't felt the need to feel small, I guess is what I'm trying to say, in Boulder. And so that's just my experience here.
I'd say my experience here too was a bit of a cultural shock, even though I had come from like going to PWI institutions throughout my entire education. It was always I always lived in like this realm of two worlds where I could go like, oh yeah, I'm at school and maybe it's like 50-50 black, white, and it's fairly diverse, but like I can go back home and be in a black space, or like go into my community, my church, my whatever, and be in a black space, and then like yeah, I'll be in white spaces other times. But here it is kind of like being completely devoid of that, and like not really having those places to go to
The black
anymore.
space,
Yeah,
I
there's
feel that. I feel that.
there's just a lack of us here. So there's like there's some, but like not especially in Boulder specifically. Like it's just the way it's developed. There's just not many spaces you can go to like that, right? And so it was definitely a culture shock. It was kind of like realizing like after a couple weeks of being here, it's mid-pandemic, so not many people are out. But like after a couple weeks of being here, I'm like, I don't know if I've seen another black person in a while. And I was like, I think I'm going crazy. But I was like, no, I think I have seen somebody, but like, it might have been a minute since I saw the last one.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes like I'm very like I think y'all can agree like you're super conscious when you're in Boulder or even Colorado in general. When you see another black person, like there's always eye contact between each other.
Yeah.
And there's always some kind of nod or acknowledgement given. I don't think I've passed one single black person, unless I wasn't paying attention, like, like I was on my phone or something. I don't think I've passed one black person who hasn't looked at me and I haven't looked at them, and we've engaged each other in one way or another.
Yeah.
And that's not to say like that's such a bad thing. It's just like you recognize that you're a strong minority here, especially a lot of black people are coming from places with heavier, more diverse cultures. So you're not used to it. You're kind of in shock of sitting here like, oh, like this isn't like my everyday life. And it's nice to be an athlete too, in the sense that we have a higher concentration of black athletes, of black students as athletes, and so there's more of us there. But like, you know, when you're out on campus and you're doing other things, like you kind of realize how of a small population you are. And I'd say like Jalen, like I haven't had a major experience here, which is a blessing. You know, like I've had those in my past and they're not fun to deal with, but being here hasn't been like that. I found like a very opening and like a very nice community on all fronts, like whether it's gender, sexual orientation, or whatever. I think the community here has been super opening and awesome with that. So like the experience has been amazing. I do think there's a shock though of when you realize what a small percentage of the population you make up here in this area.
Yeah.
Maybe want to speak on that because I experienced the same type of thing going to a high school in Orange County, predominantly white. And then going back to LA, I used to live back and forth because my mom and my dad stayed in LA when I went to the Orange County school. And then when I come back home, you know, like an hour drive away, come back home, it was like totally immersed in the black culture again. And, you know, it was such a difference.
Yeah.
It's such a difference, you know, in the way you carry yourself and the way you present yourself. And, you know, coming here, I didn't feel the need to, you know, dull who I am. You know, I feel like I can be myself. I can feel like I can, you know, talk the way I talk, walk the way I walk, you know, just kind of those things. And I didn't feel real threatened. And I've had some teammates who experienced, you know, racism, you know, in Boulder. But, you know, personally, I haven't.
Yeah. And as you, like we talked about, kind of like you're talking about being yourselves, like, you know, like, so the term code switching, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I guess, growing up how I grew up, like, code switching was kind of embedded in me. Like, right, I was in these PWI institutions, and so, like, I'll code switch all day. Like, right, like, I'm in one group, I'll talk one way, and like, whether it's color, profession, or whatever else.
With the best of them.
Yeah, so I'll say like I did feel a little pressure to kind of switch up maybe a bit, and that's just like I think it's a bit more about my upbringing and stuff, like, rather than like the actual environment here. But I was like, once I got comfortable, I think that I have been in a space more to be like, oh, I'll just be myself throughout the whole thing versus like, you know, kind of carry myself in different ways. But like reflexes take over for me, at least like you said, like you were stopped at 14, like things like that. Like it's always in the back of my mind, like, okay, I want to go to the store at night. Like I live across the street from the Safeway, but I'm realizing like one time I walked in and I was like, I just happened to notice like I was in all black with a hoodie on with like I think a black mask. And I was like, okay, like I'm not saying anything's going to happen, but I'm like, I was cognizant to be like, okay, I'm gonna take my hoodie off. I'm not hoodie off, like just take my hood down, just like, because I don't want anybody to think anything. And I know that's like a not okay, like I shouldn't have to worry about that, but like in my head, especially like where I come from,
Perception
like,
is everything.
Perception is everything.
Perception is people's reality.
So I was like, let me like kind of take the hoodie off and like, you know, like keep, I like to keep my, I do my all the time. My mom always told me as a kid to never do this, but like I always love to keep my hands in my pockets. Like on the store, I just do like to keep to myself. I don't touch anything. But she always told me to keep my hands in my pocket, and it's because like the perception that like, why are your hands in your pocket?
You got something in your
So
pocket.
yeah, so I would like, keep my hands out and kind of about like the whole time I was like, it was crazy. I was like having almost like not a panic attack, but I was like freaking out. I was like, I shouldn't be worried about this so much, but like, I was just having this moment of like, I don't want to seem like the perception. I don't want to seem like I'm going to cause trouble, even though I shouldn't have been worried about that.
I know for me, I'm from Houston, which, like y'all were saying, I come from a very diverse area, now probably one of the most diverse cities in America. And coming to Boulder was a pretty isolating experience, I'm not going to lie. I'm very close with my family, and I think that might have played a role into it too. Mm-hmm. But I remember from the very first moment I stepped on campus, moving into my dorms, and my family, we're very conscious of who we are as people. And we're looking around, I'm like, dang, I don't see nobody that looks like me. Like nobody. Like the first person I seen was leaving my dorm to bring like a cart back to the main campus area. And I first seen a black girl and I was like, oh my gosh, you look like me. And it was a kind of a situation where she didn't recognize that she looked like me. You know, like, oh, I'm black too? Like, yeah, girl, let's have a community.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you. How long did it take for you to see somebody that look like you? Because your sport and your sport, I feel like black people are a minority in the track and field. I mean, the sprinters,
well,
yeah,
I feel like that's a majority. But like as far as the whole overall, I feel like I don't see.
I don't know. I think here is a little different. most track and field teams are very diverse, and that is because track is a predominantly black sport. When it comes to sprints and hurdles and most field events, like you come like high jump, long jump, all of those. But when you get to more distance events, that's when it is more white, especially in America. But on a global level, it is very like black dominated.
My team, like we like what 10 black people, like out of 14, 16, like. It's always been a majority for my team. Like so, like as soon as I walk on campus, look, I like my first day on campus. I was surrounded by McKinley, Deshaun, Tyler, so all black people. You know, all my teammates were black. So like it didn't take me that long to really find. Okay, he's my focus over here. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's weird too because CU is not very diverse as we know, and our athletic department isn't as diverse as it may seem or come off as.
It seems that way.
So when you come to track, and I come from teams that are very black. I went to a black high school. I ran summer track my whole life, and my whole team was pretty much black. So coming here and the team being majority white, I was like, whoa, I've never seen a sport like this. And so it kind of made me take back and be like, okay, I am not the majority, even on my team and in my sport. And so that was still isolating.
That's what I was saying.
That's still isolating. I remember the first moment too, it was like, first of all, there's no Walmart here, so let's talk about the privilege in Boulder. But
oh my God, I missed the Walmart.
Yes, going to a Walmart
around the corner from my house.
Yes, going to a Walmart and not seeing no black people. Now that was a real humbling experience. Like outside of Boulder, in Denver area, and still being like a percentage was just a little bit like.
Yeah, it's definitely a shock. And I think up here, it's a bit less, like you said, less diverse. Like my team at my old school, I'd say majority black, and most teams that we win against, majority black. So I think it might be a bit of a, nationally, it kind of sometimes looks like it might be skewed, but I think track and field overall is mostly diverse. And I think it's because, like, you mentioned privilege, even just Walmart, but it made me think, like, you know, like track and field it has low entry to barrier. Because at the end of the day, like, what do you need to do track and field? Like, for what I do, you need a pad of concrete. And, like, the implements are a little expensive, but, like, as long as you can get to a school, like a shot put, that's what you need. Like, right? It's very low entry to barrier, so it allows for a lot more people to come in. But I would say, yeah, like, up here, it is hard. Like, I mean, I looked at the team when I first came here, because I honestly didn't pay too much attention to a lot of stuff when I transferred. But I kind of came in and I was like, oh, there's, like, no black people on this team. And so, you know, I kind of started counting them. And, you know, like, I will say, like, I mean, it's just a fact. You can look it up on our roster. I didn't get to double digits. On a whole entire track and field cross-country team, I include everybody, 70 to 80 people. I didn't get to double digits of black people. You get to black and brown, you kind of get, I think we got barely to double digits. But if you do just strictly black people, you didn't get to double digits. And so it was a shock for me. That was a part of the culture shock. And I get what you mean. Like, your team has been majority black, and you're able to find the community kind of easily. Like, versus us, it's like
exactly.
You could fill a very small room with the amount of people, of black people on the track and field team.
Like, you all in it together, in my sense. Like, we black and Boulder, we in it together. We part of the basketball team. Well, we have other subculture that we're black on the basketball team, and it's our family. Like that was a subculture of itself right there.
I just find that interesting, being that I think, like, when I look at it, I also look at, like, where we are, because I know, like, I don't know a lot about track and field, but I do know that here, cross country and teams like that have always been pretty successful. And in my head, when I think cross country, I think of white people, because I just feel like
Jogging.
I mean, I ran track in high school and I ran the 800, and I was the only black girl running the 800. And it was more so shocking because I'm being honest, I didn't run the race right. I placed, but I didn't run it right because I just, like, black people, I guess, I don't want to stereotype black people, but we're more so known as sprinters
in America.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you
that.
recognize that. You think of jogging, you think of, you know, white people. I mean, sprinting. Like, you know what I'm saying? You just have these icons. I feel like it's icons built up. Like, Usain Bolt, you think sprinting, you just think that. You think that. You know what I'm saying?
And there are some black people coming up in the woodworks. I would say Athing Mu. She's a girl who was at Texas A&M, went to Olympics this year. She's an 800-meter girl. Ran the mile, too. Was a great miler in college also. I don't know if she'll go back to that in a professional career, but at 400, I think she runs. And that's a black girl who, you know, I think it's so close to sprinting, but, you know, getting to the 800-meter mark, I think it might show that, like you said, like, it is kind of like the greats are starting to come up in maybe ways that aren't So in events and disciplines that weren't so popular in the past, and so like, power to her and her name and speaking like to just her kind of probably breaking down barriers of being a black girl to run the 800 and do that distance kind of training because it is predominantly known. Like, I would agree. Like when I think cross country, I'm not always thinking of black people. I'm thinking like mostly white people and stuff like that. And like on the national stage, like Ariana said, it's way more diverse, and we know that. And like as track athletes, but yeah, viewing it from the CU Boulder stage, I can completely agree. It looks like there's like no black people here, Because the track means like whoa.
Speaking of community here, where do y'all go to find, food that reminds you of home or to get your hair done? Like the little things that people don't think about, to get your hair cut.
It's usually Denver. I mean, I feel like to escape kind of this community kind of and get into, be more immersed in our culture, I feel like I had to go to Denver every single time. Like,
I mean, here for me, like I think like especially like we're all from not from here at all. So like home also means Louisiana for me. So luckily like there's a couple like Louisiana joints. The Lucille's on Pearl Street, that's all right. Like some New Orleans style gumbo, but like went to this place called the Lost Cajun, that was good too. So like connecting with home to me also, especially like I think Southern people really know like it is food. Like for sure, like what you're eating and consuming and like the history behind cooking is like such a big thing in the South. I think we all know that like that it makes it so that we like are connecting with our ancestors and connecting with our community. Like when I think of gumbo, like I think of home. I think of just being with my parents. So like sometimes I'll eat Louisiana food just because of that. Like I have frozen boudin in my freezer.
Got some boudin too.
Y'all don't know. Most people don't know what that is. It's hard to explain. It's like a sausage, but it's not. Google it.
It's like
really
dirty
good.
rice in the sausage casing.
Yes.
Y'all
If
probably
you don't know what
dirty
dirty rice is, Google that too. But like I have that in my freezer. So like I ate some the other day and I was just like, it's just good to like kind of sit there and be like, it kind of feels like I'm home because right after church on Sundays, I would go do that. But like I agree. I think like you have to go to Denver to sometimes find like those truly black spaces.
I have a question. Like we all probably experienced the taste of soul food. Like ain't no soul food spots around. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's nothing. Like I can't. If I wanted to be like, oh, I'm missing home right now. I need this. Like I need a meal that reminds me of home. Need probably some soul food. I can't really get it here. Like I don't know where to get it, but it's probably in Denver.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's probably in Denver. Yeah, that's the truth though.
Yeah.
Like even growing up in LA, like Mexican food was a huge thing, and like there is some Mexican places, but the quality of those Mexican places,
the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I will say, in Denver or going towards Denver, you can find some bomb Mexican, like
Exactly.
some authentic Mexican food.
Exactly.
In the suburbs, yeah.
That's my
In the
point,
suburbs
kind of,
sometimes.
you know?
Yeah, you have to kind of pop out of the Boulder bubble
Right.
to really get to sometimes some true authentic culture.
Yo, where do you get your hair cut, man? I don't know. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go.
Don't you have to bring people to Boulder?
We
to
used
do your-
to. We used to. We
And now
say,
y'all gotta
hey, Matt, hey, come here. Drive 30 minutes to 40 minutes. We give you some bread and cut our hair, bro. We have like 8, 9 dudes lined up, just sitting down playing video games, waiting for the next cut.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Having that barbershop culture, yeah, like it is different. Like I had a hair salon that I went to in my neighborhood. Like I went to when I was a kid, and it's kind of crazy to think like you come here and you're like you can't find a place like that. You can't find a barbershop or a salon like a black barbershop or a salon like that experience is just pretty much not able, but it just hasn't been cultivated here.
And for those who don't know, the barber shop for black men is like the black man's country club.
Oh my God.
That's what my daddy always told me. They spend hours in the barber
I like
shop.
that quote. I like that quote. Oh my God. I'm gonna put that on the shirt. Cause it's for real though. Like growing up just in the culture, going to the barbershop, it's like almost a family type thing. Like I'm in here, I know everybody knows me, getting a haircut, waiting for a haircut, just after the haircut, chilling, waiting for your mom to pick you up, like just all those things. Like it's really like that. It's really like a family culture.
Okay, I do want to be cognizant of time. Evan, it is 12:11.
Okay.
I have 4 minutes.
Okay, you got 4 minutes. All right, he said he got 4 minutes. Okay, so let's talk about LGBTQ plus in the Black community, because a lot of times it's written out of Black Lives Matter movements or just like major movements in our communities. Like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's just not really talked about. So let's talk about it and how, as Black athletes, y'all like to speak on these issues.
Yeah, gracefully, I just was a recipient of the LGBTQ plus community award, the visibility award, kind of just as an ally. I mean, I feel like that topic, the LGBTQ plus in the Black community, is skipped over a lot. When you first asked that question, I'm like, I don't even know what to really talk about because it's not really brought up in that sense. And my mom's best friend, her high school teammate, is in the community, and I call her Mom Pam, and she's loved me from day one, and when I first was born, and that's where I really getting to know her and getting to grow up with her. That's where I really was like accepting of like, okay, like it's like multiple people, like it's multiple, like all love is all the same way, like love is love, like it's all the same, and I feel like the majority of people are still having a hard time grasping that concept, understanding that concept. At the same time, the conversation that we do have about it is not really pertaining to the Black people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's not really a topic in that. I think that should change for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as a gay man myself, a gay Black man, gay athlete, like, I think it's like Evan said, like, when we talk about it, sometimes it's not in the space of Black gay people or Black LGBTQ people. It's like the faces of the movement sometimes are these white people.
Right, exactly.
And when we think about historically people like Martha B. Johnson, might be P, I might mess it up, but a trans activist and trans woman or cross-dressed woman themselves who fought for these rights but is relegated to the backside of history. And especially like as Black communities, as spiritual communities and raised in faith a lot of times as we are, that conflicts, even though it shouldn't, it conflicts with how we view LGBTQ rights and how they're treated in the Black community, right? Like it's like, or it's like this unspoken, like, don't speak about it, right? Like, oh, like somebody has an uncle and oh, they funny. What do you mean they're funny? Like, is he ha-ha funny or what does that mean?
Or like,
You know?
like sweet. Like,
Sweet,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I've had people use that terminology with me before, and I'm like, I don't really know what you want me to say to that or do to that. Like, like, let's call for this. I'm gay. Like, let's call it, I'm Black. Like, I don't need you to put these little names or words on it to try to protect me or like hide from true issues that are going on. I think like the community needs to reconcile with the fact that like Black communities especially have been very negative to their LGBTQ brothers and sisters in the past, and that there needs to be an acceptance of them in the now. And I will say, like, I've been watching a lot and reading up a lot of stuff like the Black Lives Matter movement now, and how it's been inclusive of LGBTQ people and intersectionality and all that kind of stuff, and has created a space for Black, queer, trans, other folks to have a voice and to be the leaders of a movement that's supporting our community in every aspect and not just the fact that we're Black and like kind of saying like, oh, it's okay. Because historically that's the same thing, right? Like it's like race was first and then it was like, oh, women. And then it was like race and then women. And it was like, oh, LGBTQ. And like it's like all these different things. It's like we kind of put different parts of ourselves to the back burner to be like, well, we're Black first. And it's like, no, we're everything first. We're everything at once. We're never not one of these things. We're always we're ourselves at the same time. Exactly. Intersectionality, it plays a big part in that. And I mean, this is like a promo for them, but like I watched Amend on Netflix with Will Smith, and they had an episode about that, about LGBTQ rights, and like just it's about the 14th Amendment and about how it affects our everyday lives. And it was just still powerful to see. And they named so many Black people who were relegated to the backside of history because they were queer or trans or LGBTQ in some way. And so it was insane to me to not have known that, to have realized, to meet new heroes at 24 years old because I happened to watch a documentary with Will Smith on it. So I think the Black community has a lot to move forward with that. And I think it's moving in the right direction for sure. But I think like historically we have a lot to reconcile with that for sure.
I don't want to get too controversial, I guess, on this topic, but I personally feel like the black community just, in a way, tries to enforce ideologies that come from white teachings, and we just don't know that. So in a sense, like, I feel like people talk about the family structure and how it's supposed to be a dad and a mom and kids, and just promoting that type of ideology. And I think as black people, we talk about how much we've been through and how much, like, we've had taken away. So we're like, oh, we want this type of family, we want to promote this type of black family, but without taking in the idea that a lot of people experience, or their way of seeing family is different. And I think the problem between that is we're trying to say, oh, well, this is how it's supposed to be. And I know we talk about, like, the pro-black ideology with that and stuff like that, but I just think we don't realize that we're still enforcing the white supremacist notions to ourselves unknowingly. So I think when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community, they kind of get put on a back burner because they don't fit with the norm of what black people see as the norm. But the reason we don't see it as the norm isn't because we just grew up with the idea that it was supposed to be a man and a woman and children. It's because white people taught us that, and we saw that, and we wanted that for ourselves so bad because we weren't allowed to have it. And so I think those ideologies are just being pushed in our community without us really knowing what we're promoting and how that could be problematic to our own. And I think the black community deals with a lot of issues when it comes to people that are different than what is quote unquote the norm. Like, even we could talk about the LGBT plus community, we talk about ableism, we could talk about so much, and how so many of those people are put on the back burner. So many of those people are kind of made small in the community because they aren't promoted as the standard, I guess, which is very sad. But like I said, I think the black community has a lot we have to work on internally, even talking about the issues between African Americans and people of the African diaspora, like just the differences between that. And I don't mean to bring up so many things, but it's just we have so much in fighting that we don't even recognize how it doesn't matter what the differences is that makes you, because there's no prototype black person. It's just impossible to be like, oh, this is the standard of what it means to be black, because being black is composed of so many different experiences. Like, even all of us here, we're all African Americans, but we've had so many different experiences as a black person, and that's what I have to stress to some of my white friends, that black people are not a monolith. So you can't include black people to be like, oh, all black people are this, all black people are that, just because that's what it has been stereotyped as, or that just because that is what the quote unquote standard of a black person has been shown to be like. So I think that's really where I see the differences, and I think that just goes, I know we were talking about the LGBT plus, but I feel like all of those things go into the same category of just being like, because it's not the standard and it's not what we've been taught as the standard, we look at it as different when we don't recognize, like, being black is not a general experience. Being black is different for everybody. And so you can't categorize, because, I mean, even looking at mixed people and their experiences and stuff like that, there's just so many different types of black experiences that there is no standard, and it probably would never be a standard, but we have been taught that, you know, it's a right way to do things, when in reality it's no right or wrong way, because you can't generalize people's experience and you can't generalize people's lives. So I think the black community in itself just has a lot to work on, and I think a lot of it comes from white supremacist notions and what we've been taught throughout, because even looking at, going back to the LGBT plus community, looking at how a lot of black people, and myself included, I grew up around my grandparents, I grew up around my elders, and so when it comes to my elders, they didn't really have the inclusivity and the intersectionality that we have today. So when they see it, it's not that they want to be hateful. It's not that they want to be derogatory. It's just they don't know because they didn't experience it and they didn't have it on the level that we have it now, and they didn't know about it and it wasn't as open, I guess I would say, as it is now. So when they say things like sweet or funny, I don't take it as them being as a personal attack on my family members. I don't take it. I just take it as they don't really know and they haven't really experienced it the way we experienced it as the newer generation, which isn't an excuse, but unless we sit down and have those conversations, which is another problem, we don't ever sit down and have those conversations, then it will always be a disconnect. Just because you can't expect people who grew up in the 50s and 60s who were more so fighting for our own rights to then be like, okay, well, yeah, this type of stuff is normal, because it wasn't their normal. And I think that's where we just lack as a black community, is because we don't have the hard conversations with each other, and we don't have those hard conversations as a community because there's so many different opinions thrown into it that we just don't like to have those type of conversations. But at the same time, I think the only way we will ever come together and ever move forward is to sit down and have those conversations, because we're not always going to agree with each other, which is fine. But at the same time, if we can't be together as a black community, how can we expect to fight so many different battles that we have being black when we can't even come together as a community? And I can go on and on, so I'd rather just stop right there.
Right.
Jalen came with that fire, okay? She was speaking straight facts. I do want to say, though, that's not just happening in our community. It's happening in a lot of communities, like sitting down and having these talks. And I think that's the reason why we're having this show, too, is to, challenge people to go out and have these talks after this show. Go have that talk with your grandma. Go have that talk with your best friend. Like, this is how change actually starts to happen, is by these conversations being had. So I do want to, shine light on what y'all are doing, and it's bigger than just y'all. It's for everybody to see. Going back to, like, social justice movements, too, and really, like, 2020, and we all seen how that played out. Y'all were in college when George Floyd was murdered, and how college athletics has kind of shifted and how athletes have been more vocal. Did y'all feel pressure to speak up when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement as black athletes?
Definitely. I think, like me, I'm like, when it comes to like making public statements or like going one way or another, I'm very like, kind of like my dad, when I was a politician, so I'm like very political with it. Like I kind of read all my sources and everything, that to say like, Black Lives Matter, and that at first I was kind of like just dejected, I guess, from it, because I was kind of in this space of like, I know, like I see these things, and to me I was like, yeah, this isn't nothing new. Like, yeah, where have y'all been? Like, come on, like, not Black Lives Matter, but like, where's the rest of the world been? Like, the rest of the world is like, oh my God, this is crazy, Black Lives Matter. It's like, yeah, it been mattered. Like, it's been the whole time. And so like when it first came up, I was kind of like hesitant, because, like, especially like in South Louisiana, like, there was some fear for me involved in possibly speaking up. Like, I was a little afraid of like, what backlash could I receive? Like, like, we were in a predominantly white area in a very conservative area of the South in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I'm sitting there like, like saying the wrong things sometimes, not like actual physical violence, but like just like my day-to-day life and like what could that affect with me. So I was definitely like vocal, but I had to make sure I was in like safe spaces to say that, like really safe spaces, because it was a worry of mine. It was like, as I sit there and I experience these things and we talk about them, I have to watch how I say them and propose them to people, because it was like, somebody might take this the wrong way and I might end up in trouble, even though I don't deserve to be. So that was definitely a big issue for me with that.
Me, I didn't really feel pressure to speak out on it. It was more so, I don't think I felt pressure, because I've always expressed my opinion when it comes to the black community and black issues. I think George Floyd just was a shocking incident for a lot of people, but it wasn't shocking for me, because it happens a lot, and it happens more often than people like to acknowledge, I think. But yeah, specifically here, it wasn't more so about speaking out. It was more so about I'm trying to think of the word, but I just didn't want what we were doing to be just in response to George Floyd. Like, I even had the discussion with my coaches and teammates this year, because I know last year season, everybody on the team, we had a video, and then when we would play other teams, we would all gather around in a circle before the game, and we would talk. And we would have the video of how Black Lives Matter and how Black lives have been mattering. And then this season, it went back to normal, and everybody was out for the national anthem, and I was like, what changed? What changed to where we were like, oh, this stuff doesn't matter anymore, or this stuff is not as big as an issue? And I really can't think of the word that I was going to use.
Like performative?
Performative, yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of what happened in 2020 was very performative, and I think that a lot of people, and I don't think people were performative just because it was the trend. I actually think people, when you see a man get murdered like that, you know, that is very triggering, and is very, especially for the Black community, is very traumatizing. But at the same time, I don't want to say what everybody did was performative. I can't speak for everyone, but at the same time, I think people just, being that it was recorded and being that it was pushed around the way it was, people were just very intuitive to how life really can be for Black people, not just here but around the world. So I think it just diminished like every other thing that happens, and then we move past it. But I think for me, it was more so not being pressured to talk about it, but being pressured to make sure this isn't just a moment.
Continuing the conversation.
Yeah, and continuing to have, like I said, talking to my coaches about like nothing changed, nothing happened, and to where we can make sure that the next person isn't someone we know, or the next person isn't a teammate or a coach or someone in the Black community in Boulder. Nothing changed to make sure that didn't happen. So why are we now acting like everything's just back to normal? Which I get, like I said, that happens not just with that instance, that happens in our community, in society a lot. We get over things and we move past things.
Like, how can we be proactive instead of reacting to somebody else dying?
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. Y'all talked about a little bit like how it can be so traumatizing being a Black athlete and still speaking up on these issues. This year is, this Black History Month is, the theme is Black health and wellness. How do y'all protect your mental health?
I think for me, it's taking time to be with myself, which is something I didn't do prior to the pandemic even. I kind of just like stay busy 24/7. Like, I would get home and be like, oh my God, I'm finally at my bed. It'd be like a 12, 14-hour day of just doing different activities and things. And so it was learning to kind of take some time for myself, whether that's watching TV, praying, or just sleeping even, you know, just like taking time and being like, you know what, I won't go eat dinner with these people or watch a movie or whatever. Like, I will just stay home and just sit, you know, and be with myself. That's a big thing for me, and kind of just reset, you know, whether it's like on Sunday for the next month, or for the next week, or just in the middle of the week, kind of being like, all right, it was a busy day today. I'm going to take it pretty easy tomorrow. Maybe I'm just going to stay at home, cook some breakfast at home, sit, watch some TV, and take it slow instead of rushing into the next day and dealing with all of that.
For me, I think I didn't really know what mental health and awareness was, just because it wasn't talked about as much.
And it's something that's not really talked about in the Black community at large, too.
Like therapy wasn't really talked about a lot. Talking about feelings and emotions wasn't really something that I grew up on. And it's not to say that I grew up in a bad space or anything like that, but I think now just acknowledging the trauma that I've had growing up, and being able to getting to a place to express that to the people who I need to talk to it about, so that I don't continue on in my life with trauma that I'm not acknowledging. has been big for me these past couple of years, especially in college. And I would say I have been going to therapy, which I think is an amazing experience, even though, like, when I first started, I was hesitant because I was like, well, why am I talking to somebody I don't know about problems that they might not experience, especially here in Boulder. Being honest, it's hard to find. Well, in general, it's hard to find black therapists because there's not a lot of black people in the field of therapy. But I was hesitant at first. I had a white therapist at first, and he was great. And then I moved to person of color. But yeah, I think just dealing with my mental health is a big thing, and taking that step of being comfortable talking to people about it and talking about the trauma that I've been through in my life has just really helped me with my mental health awareness, for one, and then it's also helped me be comfortable talking about those experiences and not just holding them in and not just being numb to it in a sense, but just actually dealing with those experiences.
So Evan did have to leave a little bit early. So thank you to Evan. He's going to traveling for men's basketball games. To close out, because we can talk about this topic literally forever, I'll ask y'all two different questions. I'll ask you first, Dom, and then I'll close with Jalen. What does it mean to be more than an athlete?
I think it means to be authentically yourself. I think to be more than an athlete is just to be who you are. And I think, like I said it earlier, in the sense that, like, black people aren't just one thing. Like Jalen said, we're not a monolith. Like, athletes aren't a monolith. So in the sense that I'm black, I'm a man, I'm gay, I'm from Louisiana, I enjoy reading. Like, it means I'm gonna be who I am as an athlete and more. So, like, I'm not just gonna sit there and, have, I guess people say, shoot the ball or do whatever you do. I'm gonna be who I am regardless of that status. I'm not gonna let it restrict my other actions and hold me back from being authentically who I am. Because I think people put athletes a lot of times, professionally or amateur-wise in college, in these categories of, oh, he's a football player. He can't, go be a scientist or an engineer, which, like, is disproven all the time, especially here. Like, there's some who are in science and engineering, or, like, that guy plays basketball. He's probably from an impoverished neighborhood or something like that. And it's like these stereotypes that they put on us every day of just like, you're an athlete, and whether or not, students on campus, you have it easy. It's like, you don't have it easy. We have 12, 13-hour, 14-hour days most of the time, and I'm running ragged just trying to keep up with everything and trying to get an internship, trying to get a job. So I think being more than an athlete it's simple, but it's also super complicated, right? It's simple as being yourself, but it's also as complicated as acknowledging when you aren't, like acknowledging when maybe you're lacking in your mental health awareness or your self-care, and knowing that, that just because you're an athlete doesn't mean it takes away all the other responsibilities or the pleasures of life. It's a part of who you are. It's not all of who you are. It's a big part for sure. It is something that I'm definitely going to miss, as my last year of eligibility comes to a close. It's a big part of who I am, but it's also a part of yourself that helps enhance the rest of your life. I don't think it's something that should be so isolating as it has been in times.
Jalen, to close everything out, what advice do you have for black athletes trying to navigate their way through PWIs, predominantly white institutions?
My advice would just be to never let anybody make you feel like you can't be who you are. Just because when you get caught in that gray area of trying to navigate hiding who you are and being who you are, you more so lose yourself and you damage who you are as a person more so than allowing people to see the real you. And if they accept you for who you are, then they do. If they don't, then they don't. But don't ever allow other people to influence you to change who you are as a person. I will also say, connect especially as an athlete, connect with those who aren't athletes on campus, because to be honest, well, can't speak for everyone, but I feel personally that their experiences are 10 times different than yours as an athlete, and they struggle because they don't have the athletic community to depend on. They can't walk in a building and see nothing but athletes, and majority of those athletes happen to be black. They don't have that space. They go to school and they have to be in classrooms where it might be just them as black people, and that's tough and that's hard, and especially if they come from places where they've grown up in the black community and they've grown up around majority black people, that can be really shocking to see. So I would say get with them and try to make friends with them, because you can invite them to the athletic community and they can invite you to meet black people that you wouldn't normally see on an everyday basis either. Because I know me, before I was in BSA, I didn't see any or really know any black people that weren't associated with athletics. So I would say that is important, just to help it's a mutual beneficial relationship, I would say. And yeah, I would just say, it's tough, it's hard, but at the same time, never not advocate for yourself and your community. I know, like, even today, I've been talking to a lot of people with having, bringing D9 back to campus and bringing D9 to the college experience, because I feel like coming to a PWI, that's something that I haven't gotten a chance to experience. Not to say that I, want to or would do it, but it's a part of black culture, and then not being on campus, you miss it. And then when you see your friends who are at home crossing and they're doing all this stuff, and it just makes you feel like you're missing something, and it makes you feel like you haven't experienced the total college experience that you would have if you were home. So I think just continue to advocate for the black community, advocate for black spaces, and advocate for, just having things that make being black in college normal is a huge thing. And so never be shy to speak out for the things you want to do, and just, be who you are and follow what you want to do in life. Because like I say to anybody, especially athletes in general, but specifically black athletes, they ask us to come to these schools, and they get what they want out of us, so we also have to get what we want out of the experience, because we're putting so much time, energy, and effort into it. And I get it, it's what we love to do, but at the same time, we have to make the experience as best for ourselves as we can. So never shy away from, just making your experience what you want it to be, because if you never say anything, then that could be just as problematic as, anybody who's suppressing your voice.
Yes, it is Black History Month all February long. Go out and celebrate. Learn something new. Continue the conversation, okay? Continue to advocate for black people. It don't just stop back in 2020. We haven't really made it that much further. Black lives do matter. It's not a political movement. It's a fact. And thank y'all for tuning in.